Hi, I'm Andrew Muldoon, Vice President of Philanthropic Engagement at Your Community Foundation. We are so grateful to donors like you who contribute to endowment supporting our community now and into the future. Today I'm so pleased to introduce an inside look to the Rochester Museum and Science Center's Changemakers exhibit. We were so lucky that the Community Impact Fund and Women's Field of Interest Fund were able to support this initiative by providing funding that led to the hiring of consultants from both the Haudenosaunee, African American, and Latina community to ensure that this is an inclusive and dynamic exhibit representing all of the fantastic and strong women of Western New York. Now I'd like to introduce my friends Hillary Olson and Catherine Morano Santos from Rochester Museum and Science Center, and my colleague Annette Jimenez-Gleason, who's leading the discussion. Thank you and enjoy.
My name is Hillary Olson, and I'm the President and CEO of the Rochester Museum and Science Center.
And I'm Catherine Morano Santos, Senior Director of Collections and Exhibits at RMSC.
And today we are here to talk about the upcoming exhibit, The Changemakers, Rochester Women Who Changed the World. Catherine, please tell us about the Changemakers exhibit.
The Changemakers, Rochester Women Who Changed the World is a very exciting project for us. It features the untold stories of more than 200 Rochester women and women of the Haudenosaunee Confederacy. And this is so important because there are many gender-based disparities in our society today. And so we think that women's stories have not been told and celebrated as much as they need to in order for us to change that for the future. So we really are getting at all of these amazing accomplishments and contributions of diverse women who have always, both historically and into the present, been changing the world.
Hillary, I understand this is the first time the museum chose to employ a community curation process. Please explain the rationale for using this strategy and the impact of the process in creating the exhibit that the public will see.
The museum is 108 years old, and we've always sat in the Rochester community. What we want to make sure that we're doing with this exhibit development model of using community resources and community curators is making sure that we are of the community, that we are not just telling the stories that one curator or a small group of people came up with and decided that these were the stories of Rochester women, but we wanted to make sure that we were capturing and curating all of the stories of the entire Rochester community. So we wanted to make sure that each person who was a woman in history that has these amazing experiences and this amazing story, that all of those stories were told and it wasn't just one or two people. So the museum is excited to be able to showcase the entire community, and in order to do that we had to gather the community to help us make it happen.
Catherine, as part of that process, why did RMSC choose to hire diversity and inclusion consultants, for which the Community Foundation provided a grant?
So there are a couple of reasons why we chose to hire equity consultants. Through the equity program at the Rochester Area Community Foundation, we were able to get support to do that, and it was a very important piece for us because we knew that in order to create an equitable product, we needed to have an equitable process. And it was actually one of the community curators who really encouraged us down that path. So by hiring 3 diversity, equity, and inclusion consultants, we were able to really ensure that equity was at the forefront of everything we were doing, from the nomination and selection of featured women, all the way through the creation of content, research, label writing, as well as the presentation of the exhibit itself. So that was really a game-changing piece for us, to be able to include the expertise of people whose work is rooted in equity around gender and race issues.
To both of you, can you talk about the effects of having these consultants as part of the entire evolution of the exhibit? And has it had an effect on RMSC overall?
It's had a huge effect. So the impact is not just on the exhibition. The exhibition process has worked with community curators and worked with the diversity consultants to make the exhibit itself very rich, very diverse, and representing all the stories that we talked about. but the museum itself is changing. The museum itself is, because of this, is being informed about process and procedure and things that we should be doing overall as an organization rather than just in this exhibit, and it's helping us change. So we have now moved forward as an organization rather than just this exhibition. So this will impact us well into the future.
It was very important for the consultants to be a part of the project because they really brought equity to the process. And one of our community curators really encouraged us to utilize expertise of people who have that equity-based expertise in both gender and race-based issues, because we knew it was very important in order to end up with an equitable product to have an equitable process also. And so they made us think of in new and exciting ways about things like how to have inclusive representation in the exhibit and how to have that authentic voice in the stories that we're telling. So it was just so important in every aspect of the exhibit development. We also wanted to ensure that everyone was able to see themselves in the exhibit, and so they really challenged us every step of the way to ensure that we did have inclusive representation on many dimensions of identity.
And Catherine, how has the planning had to pivot and prepare for the exhibit to be virtual and in person? And what can visitors expect?
Yeah, so we've been thinking a lot more about our virtual experience. One of the hallmarks of all Rochester Museum and Science Center exhibitions that are developed internally is what we call the hybrid model, which blends interactive hands-on experiences with collections-based immersive spaces and programming. And so that will be true for the Changemakers as well. So we're really excited about some of the interactive opportunities that we have. So people will be able to incorporate their own feedback into the exhibit and vote on issues, pilot a plane through a flight simulator experience. So they'll be able to do all of those exciting things in the exhibition, but also be able to engage with authentic objects. And so when we were thinking about the virtual experience, we wanted to bring some of that interactivity to the virtual experience as well. So we're working to think through how we can create a virtual tour of the entire exhibition so that people will actually be able to move through the exhibit as though they are in the space physically. We're also creating an interactive map, and this has been a partnership with a student from RIT. And so she has been developing this interactive map that features all of the nominated Changemakers and provides a location-based entry point into the story of that Changemaker. So that's another exciting piece where people who engage with that virtually will be able to kind of select their own stories that they want to take a closer look at and understand how they fit within the Rochester region. So all of those are different ways that people will be able to engage both physically and virtually with the exhibition.
And then finally, is there anything more either of you would like the financial supporters of the exhibit to know?
Thank you. Thank you is number one. Because without donations and supporters and people who love the museum and members, we wouldn't be able to do all the things that we're doing. Without the Rochester Area Community Foundation, this exhibit would be good, but it's going to be great because of the Rochester Area Community Foundation. So in any exhibit development process, anytime that you're working with a nonprofit, we can't do it without those supporters. So my biggest message is thank you.
And I also want to echo Hillary's thanks, but I also want to say that we have the power to change the world with this exhibition. And I think not only will people who visit both in person and virtually feel inspired and empowered by the stories of these changemakers that they'll be able to relate to, but I think we'll also be able to change the community narrative around women's stories. And so those stories that often have been silenced or attributed to men or downplayed historically will be illuminated in a way as never before and on a scale as never before. So we really do have an opportunity through this exhibition to have a short-term impact on the people who visit and a long-term impact on our community as a whole to start thinking about and celebrating women's stories in a major way. And I just want to say I've also been very inspired through the process of helping to research and develop the content for the exhibition. And there are just so many untold stories that we'll have an opportunity to showcase through this meaningful project.